Dear Christopher, here is your friend Thomas the Tank Engine. He wanted to come out of the station yard and see the world. These stories tell you how he did it. I hope you will like them because you helped me to make them. Your loving Daddy.
I hope you made them, Daddy? Does that mean I'm going to be a successful author like you one day?
Well,
Son, let's sit down and have a chat.
hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Really Useful Podcast. I'm your host, Bonnie, also known as Old Teapot 7. I'm here with my co-host.
Sakura the Diesel. Hey everybody, how's it going?
Well, today we got a pretty good episode, don't we, Zek?
We certainly do. Yes, everyone, this is the book that you've all been waiting for. Yes.
Well, not
We need a poo for you guys.
well, not me. This is not the book I was waiting for, but we'll get to the book I was waiting for much later.
Go ahead.
Okay, so today we got possibly the most overplayed, overused, and most overrated railway series book in its existence. Thomas the Tank Engine.
That basically made the star-billing bastard.
Pretty much. And today we're gonna start this episode on a solemn note. If you just read this week, we're sad to report that Queen Elizabeth II passed away. Sadly.
Yeah. So. By the time we're recording this, we both heard the news. So, should we tell them right now that what we have planned at least
Yes.
in terms of all right. So basically, when we get to the final book, Gordon, the big engine and everything, that's basically going to be the episode where we're going to dedicate it for Queen Elizabeth. Reasons being, we'll explain a little bit more when we get to that book, but it actually does make sense for those that our railway series historians.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, this week has been a pretty. How's this week been for you, man?
It's going pretty good. It's been going pretty good. I've been reading railway series and everything. At least I've been reading Thomas the Tank Engine twice, once on my own, and then once listening to Johnny Morris and everything.
All right, that's good. That's good. I actually had a good week. I actually had a good week because I finally got the finale book of this whole podcast.
Huzzah! Which we're probably not even gonna get till years later.
Yeah, till years later,
but
I'm pretty happy that I finally managed to get my hands on a copy of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, today we're doing Thomas the Tank Engine. This book has a lot of interesting history. So you want to get into the history portion?
I do know a little bit about how Thomas the Tank Engine came to be and such. I at least know what everybody else knows. So sure, I can talk about it a little bit and such.
Yes, go ahead.
So the reason that Thomas the Tank Engine came to be was because after the success of the 3 railway engines and everything, or at least before the books reached shelves and everything, Chris actually wanted a model of Gordon and such from his dad. However, Wilbur found that he didn't have much luck in creating a model of Gordon that would satisfy his son and everything. So instead of making a big tender engine and everything, usually what he could find around the house, he actually made a little tank engine for Christopher and such. And actually it was Christopher himself that named the engine Thomas. And as you listen to the foreword and everything, Chris basically asked his daddy if he can make stories of Thomas, and Wilbur thought that hey, that's actually not a bad idea. We got a new engine. Why not make some stories about him? And lo and behold, that's how Thomas the Tank Engine came to be. Bonnie wants to add up any other facts.
Yes. I think everybody knows that Thomas did not start as an E2.
Yes, that is actually true.
He started out as a J50, based on the wooden model that Wilbur made for Christopher. However, when the book was written and they were looking for an illustrator for the book to be illustrated, they got illustrator by the name of Reginald Payne.
Who's not actually related to C. Dalby Payne.
No, he's not related to C. Reginald Dalby. Dalby came Dalby came 2 years later, but we'll get to C. Reginald Dalby in a little bit. So Reginald Payne was a southern man. He lived on the southern region of the United Kingdom, and he was in the Southern Railway, and the Southern Railway had the E2s, and it was Reginald Payne's idea to draw Thomas based on an E2. And what you're going to be seeing right now are some of the original illustrations made by Reginald Payne. So as you can see right here, Thomas is a little bit longer than he normally is.
Pretty much. There are some slight differences between like his illustrations and the re-illustrations that C. Dalby made and everything. In my opinion, I think like the original images were actually a lot more better, especially when you get to like stories where you see the big station and everything. It actually does look more like a real railway versus like what Payne redrew later on.
What Dolby? Because
Oh, Dalby, yeah, Dalby, Payne, whatever.
yeah, Dolby actually re-illustrated the book, which, if you think about it, there wasn't that much change done. If you think about it, they look pretty much identical to the Payne illustration.
They are identical for the most part, but there are some slight changes here and there. Nothing too major, but it's still noticeable for some pages.
Yeah, for example, like one of the things that Dolby removed was the E2. I think it's the I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's one of these two things from in the smoke bots.
I'm not really interested in that.
I can't think of it on my head. But if anyone knows what I'm talking about, comment down below.
Comment down below, yell at us, and take away our like railway license.
And yeah, pretty much. Now Thomas being an E2, this satisfied Audrey, but we're gonna get to a book much later that I don't know if you guys noticed the foot plate on Thomas, but in a later book that foot plate is gonna be flattened. But we'll get to that book when we get to that book
Yeah,
because
we'll get to it when we get to it. And it's actually pretty interesting that like that pretty much Audrey was okay with the change in Thomas, but then when it came to like Dalby and the other incident, his fuck up, that actually made Audrey want to strangle him.
pretty much. And so yeah,
Which I think, like when you think about it, because it's just like you said, like at least with Thomas, he was still based on the real engine, and from what I understand, Payne was still able to at least copy like enough to like what E2s did look like back then. First with Payne was just like, well, it's just talking trains and stuff. So I'll just make them however I want to make them.
yeah, but for the most part, it worked because little did Payne know he helped create a very popular children's icon.
It's not just Payne either. It's also like both like Wilbur had a part of it because like he was the one that wrote the stories, and Chris also had a part of it too because he was the one that did name the tank engine in the first place. Can you imagine like can you imagine if like Wilbur named it like Johnny the Tank Engine or something like that?
I don't think it. I don't know about that. I don't think it would have had much of an impact as it did in 1946 and in the years following.
Yeah. I don't think so either. So
Because Thomas is pretty much a likable. Thomas is pretty much a likable name, and anyone can say that name.
pretty much like it's a name that like even people that have never watched the show or even read the books know what Thomas is at this point. I think that says a lot about a character that's been like that's almost going to be like 80 years old and like coming soon in just about 4 more years from now, and that's that's something that definitely does tell you something about how far Thomas has gone in terms of like because when you think about it like in terms of like in terms of like the early books, at least definitely in this season, he did appear a few number of times and everything. But as we get to the later books and everything, like between like Wilbur and Chris and everything before the TV series came along, Thomas wasn't really used all that much, unless like Wilbur had like a thought out plan about like how Thomas could be inserted to the stories. But ever since like but pretty much ever since this book, the fourth book, which is taking Engine Thomas again, and Thomas the Branchline Engine, Thomas is becoming more as like a secondary sort of character until like again until we get to like the Chris's books and until like the TV series took off, which again that is something to think about.
How the TV series? Okay, so yeah, like the TV series. When the TV series started, there was no the relationship between the railway series and the TV series was pretty good for the most part. However, by the time of season three, the publishers were like, "Hey, Thomas is the most popular character, so let's make Christopher write railway series books about him because he's the most popular character. That'll drive up sales." Yeah.
And yeah, little did they know that sooner or later that was going to lead to the downfall. Which again, we'll get to it when we get to it. Which which we're not even past that year yet. So we got a good long while to until we figure out what the hell happened with that.
But it's interesting that you bring that up about Thomas being a secondary character because after the second book and the fourth book, Tank Engine Thomas again, Thomas doesn't really appear that much. We don't
Well,
see it.
but like I said, like in the earlier books, like in terms of this season, he does still appear quite frequently, and there's still like stories where he's the main character and does play a role. But pretty soon when we get to like season two, it definitely like when we get to season three, then that's when like yeah he's gonna start feeling more like a secondary character as opposed to a main character, which again is actually pretty interesting because like you said, we're used to Thomas of being the main character of his own show. Whereas, like in the Railway series, like he wasn't really that much of a main character. He was just still like he was still just a character based compared to like all the other characters that had their own books and their own stories and such.
Pretty much, pretty
Like
much.
like the Railway series was just more focused on like whatever engine and setting suited the story the best, and pretty much like Wilbur would just pretty much just go with it. The Railway series wasn't really more about Thomas. It was just more about like you know in a way you could say it was just more about Sodor itself as time goes on.
Exactly, and yeah, like there in season two there are some stories like for example the Fat Controller's engines. That's a Thomas story if you think about it.
In a way, until we get, I don't really count that as like well, actually no, actually yeah, you were saying like,
Yeah, you
well,
know the
actually yeah, it is Thomas story. Sorry, I thought I thought you were talking about book 12 as a whole and everything.
no the final story of book 12.
Yeah. I finally get you. Yeah. That is more of a Thomas story when you do think about it, because Thomas does start in the beginning, and you do follow him throughout the story.
Yeah, pretty much, and yeah. So I think that wraps it up for the history portion. So shall we get into the stories?
Sure thing. I did win first in terms of like story number one, so you go first with Thomas and Gordon.
All right, Thomas and Gordon. I think everybody knows what this story is about. This is one of the most classic Thomas stories ever.
Yes, it's a
So
shipping story.
so Thomas and Gordon is okay. So Thomas and Gordon, we get introduced to Thomas, who is like a cheeky little engine with six small wheels, a short stumpy funnel, a short stumpy boiler, and a short stumpy dome. And the story begins by telling us, Thomas being a cocky shithead,
Pretty much.
pretty much because he basically plays tricks on the other engines and wakes them up whenever they're trying to get a rest. And one day his jokes go too far when he wakes up Gordon, and to teach him a lesson, Gordon actually bumps into the coaches and then takes Thomas along with him for the ride. And after that, he takes him on this crazy ass journey to I believe Wellsworth. And
I know in the TV series as Wellsworth, I'm not sure where they did end up in the Railway series. It could be Wellsworth, but it could be like another station, because you never know.
yeah, exactly. And then after that, Thomas is tired, and Gordon is like laughing at him because as a payback. And then Thomas has a drink, and he promises never to be cheeky to Gordon ever again.
Oh shit.
Yeah, yeah. How's that? How's that for like a first story? Like Thomas did deserve it. Like he was being a cocky shithead
He
through.
did. He did. He definitely did deserve it. I will agree on that. And if I may break for a little bit, when you compare the story to like the first story of like the first book, Edward's Day Out and everything. This is definitely like the first book where like well one is the first book where like instead of focusing on like different engines, we're focusing on one main engine and everything. And the first story really does a real great job. It's like an introduction to like how Thomas is going to be in the next story. Whereas like compared to Edward and everything, like with Thomas we got an idea that yeah he's a cheeky little engine and everything. With Edward, we haven't really gotten too much intro about what Edward was like. When you think about it, like the first story was just more about like Edward going around a railway, and that's it. Like we didn't really see too much of what his character could be, or like or basically at least like what it could have been later on down the road. He was just more as like the character that was there to set up the plot and such when you think about it.
Yeah, pretty much. And comparing Thomas to like his later self, like Thomas in this story is like a it's like a bitch pretty much.
Well, I wouldn't say. Well, okay, okay. Actually, he does cry like a bitch. Yeah, especially when we get to his next two stories and such. But at the same time, like but at the same time, like reading the story and everything, you really do get the sense that like that yeah, he is being a little shithead because he thinks he's better than everyone. He thinks like he has the hardest job and he does the most work. It wasn't only till Gordon comes up and be like, Thomas, you have no idea what hard work means. Want to show what hard work means? Come along for the ride, bitch. And pretty much like after like Thomas finally gets that awakening, he's like, you know what? Maybe I'm not really all that important as I thought I am. And you do start to see it a little bit, where it's like especially at the end where he promised never to be cheeky to Gordon again, because now he understands like just how much of the work Gordon has to do compared to like what he has to do back at the station.
Yeah, and this is still like at the very beginning of Gordon's Gordon's life as a character. He's still a pompous a pompous character.
Well, in this story, like yeah, he's still a little pompous per se, because especially at the end where he basically smugs at Thomas to just be like, yeah, no, you know what hard work means, don't you now? But at the same time, like this is kind of the few times where you do start to see where Gordon is also coming from too. You start to understand why he wanted to do this in the first place. It wasn't like he wanted to be mean to Thomas, because it's like you said, Thomas did deserve it. He was asking for it. And when you think about it, like maybe not intentionally, but like he definitely, again, he still wanted to teach him a lesson and show him that like other engines have harder works they have to do as well too. Thomas is not the only one that has like important jobs or anything like that.
Yeah, pretty much. So Thomas and Gordon is like I said, it's a classic story, and I think it's a great way to start this book, this incredible book on. And I really don't have too much to say, but let's talk about the illustrations for a little bit because, oh my goodness, they are absolutely beautiful.
I do agree. I do agree. Again, both like the original illustrations as well as like the reimaginative illustrations and everything. Like they're both really good. Especially when you get to like the station and like the whole like uh not necessarily chase scene, but like the scene where Gordon is showing Thomas around the railway. The TV series also does a really good job on like putting that on like capturing what the illustration was able to show and putting that into the screen and everything. Because even in the illustrations, you definitely do feel like Gordon is going real fast. Both Payne and even Dalby captures it really well.
I think the Adventure Begins also did a fantastic job with that snippet of Thomas and Gordon.
I do have to agree with you right there. And, you know what? One day I will have to rewatch The Adventure Begins because it's been a long time since I've seen that special.
I love that special. It's one of my favorite Thomas specials ever.
Hmm.
So for Thomas and Gordon, I don't have anything else to say. I'm gonna give the story a 10 out of 10. This is an incredible story to start off this incredible book. So what about you?
Alrighty. Well, one thing I will say before I also give my rating, again, I actually do like what they do for Thomas and Gordon. Like, it is kind of a shame that like in the Railway series we don't get to see them pair up too much. But when we do get to see, when we do get to see them pair up and everything, they do make for like really great and interesting characters. When you think about it, they're almost kind of like the brothers of the Island of Soda, where Gordon is like the big brother that like tries to teach Thomas, and even even when he bullies him and makes fun of him, he still wants to make sure that like he doesn't go too far. Where Thomas is like yeah, that cheeky little brother that likes to try to like play pranks with his big brother, only for him to get fucked up in the end. So
Yeah.
anyway, for my rating, I'm gonna agree with you. I really don't have anything bad to say about this story, so I'm also gonna give it a 10 out of 10. Fuck it, I think it's a really, yeah, like I said, it's a really great introduction to like Thomas as a character and everything. And again, as we see later on, especially after this story, I think after this story, like he actually does finally realize that like yeah, there is more hard work to do, and I think that's when like we start to see him get jealous and actually want to do more, and instead of just being a station pilot, which we're
Eh,
gonna see in the next story.
yes, yes. Like there's nothing bad about this story. Like this story is perfect. Like one of the few stories I can say that is perfect from beginning to end.
Same here. I agree.
Yeah. So 10 out of 10 for the both of us.
Pretty much.
All right. So with that, let's flip over the page and we go to the next story, which is Thomas's train.
Alrighty, my turn. So Thomas is trained. So basically, Thomas gets jealous that like hey, all of you big engines actually do important stuff too. I want to do important stuff too. And basically, when Henry is sick and everything, Thomas is given the chance to pull his train. And well, it's Thomas. How do you think it's gonna go?
No one knows what happens.
No one really knows what happens except if you watch the adventure begins, and then it kind of does explain what happens.
Pretty much.
So, alrighty, so for me, again, so if you guys seen my season 1 review I did a long time ago, you guys would know that like a big day for Thomas was one of my top 5, episodes of season 1 and everything.
I don't think you finished what actually happened in the story.
Oh, for
Yeah,
oh,
the synopsis.
I mean, like again, it's Thomas. How do you think like he does the first time pulling this train? So I think people could get an understanding of like what Thomas did. So
All right, then. Fair enough. Anyway, go ahead.
Any- anyway, so yeah, like I said, I placed like Thomas's train at like at number 5. I'm like my season 1 review, and I still really do love this story. Like and especially like reading from the book, like after what happened in the last story and everything, it actually does. I think it's actually a really good follow up and everything. Seeing Thomas being like, actually wanting to do more than just being like, a station pilot and everything, and actually wanted to, be just as important as the other big engines, which is something that like, a little kid would probably do once they start seeing like, the parents, the friends, or even like, the brother, or even like a sibling and everything, like, doing something important, and they want to do something just as important as them, just so like they could feel the pride, they could feel like the praises and the accomplishments and all that.
And
Um,
and this is the first book where we actually get to see Henry being ill, which is going to be pretty common for the rest of these books, up
yes,
until book 6.
and may I also point out something a little funny, but also kind of dark when you think about it. In the TV series, Thomas actually does look a little concerned. I'm like, oh shit, is Henry actually going to feel better? Like in the TV series, like he actually pulls the train more so. I think he pulls the train not because like he wants to show off or anything, but because like he is concerned for Henry and actually figures that like, well, my friend's sick, maybe I can help him out or something. But in the book, like he's actually kind of smiling. He's actually kind of a little happy that basically Henry is sick. He's actually just like, oh goody, someone is sick. Someone's about to die. That means I could show the fuck up.
That is actually fucking dark. That is fucking dark.
What's that? Henry might need surgery. Other than the fact he might die, fuck that. I want to pull the train. Go on, Henry. Bye bye. I don't know if that was like I don't know if that was what Wilbur like
Or Reginald
intended, or
Payne
if that's
one.
the way that like Payne read it and figured, well, I mean, Thomas is kind of a cheeky little shithead, so fuck it, I'll just draw him to where like he's glad Henry's sick and everything.
If you guys think this is the funniest illustration, wait until we get to the next story. Wait until we get to the next
Yeah,
story.
pretty much. But anyway, and also like I said too, like the way Thomas like gets really overexcited and everything. Again, that's something like any of us can relate to and such. When you get overexcited or you think too much, like you sometimes don't realize that like you left something behind, or that like you made a mistake until like it's a little too late. And yeah, feeling that embarrassment and feeling like that little fuck up that you did, again, that moment does happen. And again, the way that like not even that it shows up in the writing, but even in the illustration, like you see Thomas looking so sad that it feels real. It does feel real that like he is so embarrassed that like what he did, especially on like the first day too.
Exactly, and that's what happened to Thomas has happened to me a lot. If you think about it, I sometimes have the mindset that I'm busy, focusing that I'm gonna have a test or something, and lo and behold, once I get to like the place I'm actually going, I realize I left something behind, and it's so embarrassing.
Pretty much. That's also happened to me, like a few times too, especially during school where I leave something behind and I don't realize it. And I like there's plenty of times where sometimes I'll leave my pencil bag behind. I'm just like fuck.
Oh man, that has happened to me a lot, and I cannot imagine that. Oh
Yeah.
man. Oh
But
man.
yeah, another thing I also do like and everything, I also do. I don't know how you feel about this, but I like how in like both the TV series and in the Railway series, they do leave it somewhat of a mystery. And why did how did Thomas leave the coaches behind? Because it gives people lots of answers to how any of those possibilities could have happened and
I
such.
actually like that because that is actually a really good thing to leave up to the viewers. Like what actually happened, we never know. So it's up to the viewer to come up with their own theories.
Yeah. And I can also understand why, the Adventure Begins kind of had to, change it up a bit, because, because basically, there were actual animations and everything. It wasn't models or a single narrator anymore and everything. And to be fair, their own little possibility of what happened does actually also make sense too, given Thomas's character and what he's done so far in the special.
Yeah, pretty much. However, in the special, Thomas is always nice from the very beginning. Unlike in this book, where he starts off as like a little, pompous.
Yeah, he does. Again, it's more of a give and take. Again, I can understand why they wanted to do it and everything, because Thomas also started off as a cheeky little shithead as well too. It might draw some kids away. I don't know if it would or not. Given how Thomas was presented during the CGI series all along and everything. But at the same time, they still try to keep his cheeky personality intact, throughout the whole special. So it's not he's overly nice or anything like that. And again, if what I do remember the special, they actually still, show off his growth pretty well as the special goes on. Just as much as they show it off in the book as well.
Yeah. Oh, so also, but before we move on, let's take a little bit of a break and talk about Johnny Morris because this
Sure.
book is another one of his highlights.
Yes. Okay, so I will say this right here. I love what he does for Thomas. I think his little childlike soft voice actually fits his character perfectly.
Wake up, lazy bones! Ah, do some hard work for a change. You can't catch me.
Ah, you can't catch me. Ah, I'm off to get some tea and crumpets.
So
Ah.
so you so you guys remember in the last episode where I said like I love what he does with the trucks. Well, there's another gag of his that got stuck in my head, and it's faster, 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 faster.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that, again, even though, Johnny, was, a little bit cautious how well this series was going to do, he still gave his damn best on, giving a really good narration performance and everything. And you can definitely tell it does continue to grow as the series goes on.
Yeah, I think starting from the Nets book, that's when I really start to really enjoy him as a narrator.
Yeah, same here.
I do like what he does with the first two books, but I think from starting from James the Red Engine, spoiler alert, that's when he really sets his core as a narrator, in my opinion.
Pretty much.
So anyway, go ahead.
Alrighty, so let me see. Is there anything else I want to talk about for? Actually, I will also mention this because this is something the Unlucky Tugs mentioned too. And now that I think about it, it is actually pretty interesting because, in because what we know so far in the Railway series, now I don't know how far. Now we don't know how far Thomas actually made it into the Railway series in terms of the station from the single box. But if we're going by what we know so far from Thomas and Gordon, then seeing Thomas thinking and boasting to himself that he's the best and everything, only to get stopped by the first single that he's ever seen, where he's just literally a few feet away from the station, and also to realize that he's fucked up. That is kind of actually a little bit more funny when you think about it. Whereas, in the Mullet era, he goes far, but not too far. Whereas the TV series, he almost goes off, he almost, chops away almost to the whole island.
Yeah, I actually prefer the TV series version in that because if you go by the railway series logic, and going by the way that he only passed one signal bus and that's it. Like I actually prefer him going way too far to the point where it becomes even more funny when he doesn't realize he's not pulling anything.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it also does make sense when you think about it, because again, going off what we know about Thomas so far, like, in the last story, it does make sense that, like, when he sees, just people shouting and waving, he would immediately think that, like, he would immediately think that, like, oh, they all love me and everything. They all want to kiss my feet or kiss my wheels and such.
What the
And
fuck?
and then and it basically, he gets to like, he basically gets to like, the very first single box and seeing them waving. It's like, yes, yes, you can kiss my buffers later. Bye. So yeah, this is another story where I actually don't have anything bad to say about, to be honest. I guess maybe if I do have a little minor thing, it's that like again, maybe like maybe yeah, maybe like what Toy Bonnie has said, like yeah, like the whole journey where it's like Tom was only a few feet away. Mine it does ruin it a little bit, but honestly, it's just more minor and everything, and I still love this story to this day. That you know what, I'm also gonna give it a 10 out of 10. Fuck it, it's a good story.
Yeah. So as for me, Thomas's Train has also been one of my favorite TV series episodes. I love the concept like Thomas thinks that he's pulling something when he's actually not pulling anything, which it's kind of funny if you think about it.
It is.
And the way and I love how Thomas actually learns from his mistakes,
Hmm.
even though he was he got a little bit too excited. And I think we've all been there. Like we get too excited about doing something, and then we do it wrong, and then we get into trouble. But you actually learn from your mistakes. Like no, you don't do it that way. You need to do it this way.
Pretty much.
So yeah, so this story, I love this story as well, and I agree with you. This is another very good story. The illustration for this one, I actually like the illustration for this one too. That first illustration you talked about, where Thomas is with Henry, it's like, oh yeah, he's sick. Okay, the train is mine, asshole. But I also really love the illustration where Thomas has that sad face for. Is that even a sad face?
I mean, it's kind of a sad face. It's kind of a sad face, even though he's not crying. But like, I think it's just more like disheartened at like oh no, my public image is ruined.
Like I actually, that face became so popular that even made it to Ertl. I don't know if you know about that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and when the Ertl range was first launched, you remember that they had sticker faces instead of the plastic faces.
Yeah, yes, I think I do remember that.
Well,
Yes.
one of the faces that was included with Thomas was that sad face from the illustration. So yeah, so Thomas's Train, I actually love this story a lot, and I agree with Sako. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. It's a great story. I agree.
So all right, 10 for 10 so far. Like it's going pretty good. Like
Very good if you
if it
think
keeps,
about it.
yeah, yeah, it is. You know what? If it keeps this up, then I think we all know what the grade for this book is going to be.
Yep. So up next we got Thomas and the Trucks, and that's my turn.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So Thomas and the Trucks. We start off after the last story, and Thomas is upset that Thomas is angry that he's tired of pushing coaches and he wants to see the world. Little did people know that quote will later give us something awful in the Thomas franchise. Anyway, so
Anyway,
Thomas gets tired of being a station pilot, and then one day, Edward comes to the shed and talks with him, and he suggests that Thomas take his train of trucks, and in return, Edward can do the shunting, and Thomas agrees. And the next day, when they ask their drivers, and they say yes, so Thomas goes up to find the trucks. He pulls the trucks. However, after he reaches the hill, the trucks push him down the hill all the way up to, I believe, Wellsworth. Is that correct?
I think it's Wellsworth. I know in the TV series he stops at Marin.
Yeah, I think it's Wellsworth in the books, but
Yeah,
whatever. So
actually I think you're right, because I think like the Railway series podcast, like the book
really,
club.
the book club, yeah.
Yeah, they actually do bring up that I believe that like at the beginning of the first two books, Thomas and Edward and Gordon, they were all from Vickerstown originally,
Yes, that is
and
true.
and
That
then
is true.
basically like sometime after like James the Red Engine and everything, that like they all moved to like Tithmouth and such.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, the first.
Going by that logic and going by your route, then yes, I do believe that Thomas actually does stop at Wellsworth.
Yeah, so after he stops at Wellsport, the fat director scolds him because he was going too fast, and then he advises him that he needs to learn a lot about trucks, so he can be a really useful engine.
Trademark.
Yeah. So Thomas and the Trucks, I like this story, but there's a little bit of a nitpick with this story. Why didn't they ask the fat director permission first? Like,
Yeah, that was. I mean, yeah. When you kind of think about it, like um, well, I guess like maybe you could say technically they might have asked permission, or maybe like maybe like when they got to like the station, when they got to the station, like the station master was going to tell the fat director, but it never reached him in time or something, so he didn't know. But again, that's another thing that like the adventure begins actually kind of like fixes per se, because like because like there's actually one of the few times, at least in terms of like the adventure begins, that Edward also gets in trouble for like what he did as well.
yeah, like that was actually when I first watched it out. That was pretty shocking, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, I think I was a little surprised too. It was like, oh, okay, and then like the more I think about it, it's like, yeah, it does make sense, because like Edward was the one to suggest it in the first place.
So yeah, technically Edward gets a little bit of the blame too, but he was only trying to help. If you think about it.
Yeah, he was basically only trying to help his friend. Yeah.
Yeah. So Thomas and the Trucks, this is a classic, another classic story. Like I love the TV series episode, and I also like the book, the railway series version. Like it's classic. It's your typical story of Thomas pulling some trucks. The trucks get the better of him. They push him down the hill, and he almost crashes, and he gets into trouble.
Pretty
But
much.
and I do like the TV series version a little bit more just because of because say it with me, the music.
Oh yes, yes. Again, Mike and Junior really does like they did a fantastic job of capturing like Thomas puffing around the island with the trucks and everything, and especially when we get to like Gordon's Hill and hearing that music change and everything, like it might not have been like the first runaway theme per se, but it was definitely like the first runaway moment where you definitely do feel like well, you definitely do feel like oh shit, something happened. Like someone's gonna be okay or something. Like will he make it in time? Will he not crash and such?
Yeah, and actually one of the illustrations from this story is actually the most iconic, possibly the most iconic railway series illustration ever. Yeah.
Oh yes, the one where Thomas is puffing out of Henry's tunnel.
Yes, that is possibly the most iconic railway series illustration if you think about it.
So iconic that even a TV series actually used it for the episode.
Yeah, yeah. Even at the very end of the adventure begins, they had the credits rolling with the illustrations from the railway series, and that was the last illustration they showed.
You know what? Like I think that was a really nice touch they did for the end credits, just to show off like illustrations. I can't imagine how many people that were fans of the railway series like
I almost broke down.
Showed.
I remember when I first saw them, I almost cried of joy when I saw that.
I don't blame you, because you know what, like the more I think about it, I think the Adventure Begins was really the best proper way to like celebrate the 75th anniversary of Thomas and such. They really went out with a bang on that one.
Oh yes, yes, exactly, exactly. So Thomas and the Tom, I can't think anything else to say about this story. It's a typical, it's another classic Thomas story if you think about it.
Pretty much.
Although I will say Edward's crooked face is hilarious.
Yeah. I was kind of waiting. I was kind of waiting for like if you were gonna bring it up, I was probably gonna bring it up and everything too. And yeah, the crooked faces, like yeah. If you thought the model series faces had problems, even the railway series illustrations had some problems with the faces too.
I just imagine that in that illustration, take like, hey Thomas, look at this.
Hey Thomas, look at this. I just watched The Exorcist today.
Okay, Edward. Why the hell is your face crooked?
I don't know, Thomas. I don't know. Maybe my driver accidentally turned the wheel way too much.
So aside from the aside from the small nitpick I had with why they didn't ask the fat director, aside from that small nitpick, I think the story is really good. Like there I can't think of anything extremely negative to say. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is gonna be our third 10 out of 10 for the list.
Pretty much. Do you want to talk a little bit about the trucks in this story? Seeing this is the first time where like they're kind of
Yes.
characterized a little bit in the books.
Yeah, this is actually the first time the trucks have a personality if you think about it.
Yes, they did sort of had a personality a little bit, like we did had an idea, like what they were, but this is the first time where we do really see off their troublesome nature and everything. Like if an engine's not used to them, you better watch out and everything. And I think I think this was like Wilbur's way of trying to imply realism, because from what I understand, trucks back in the old days and everything were not handled very well and such. And if you did not prepare yourself and everything, then yeah, much like in the Island of Sodor, be prepared for the worst.
Exactly. And if you bump them or if you don't know how to handle them, beware because they can play some tricks and you can have an accident or fall off the tracks.
Pretty much. And as we're gonna see, that's gonna kind of be of a theme in some of the Railway series stories. I don't know how much. It wasn't that much of a theme later on in like the Chris's stories, and even later on, even later on, it wasn't always used that much. But when it was used to its fullest.
Yeah, the TV series, love to play with that a lot, especially in the later seasons.
Which makes sense because they need some kind of conflict or some kind of action, and turns up the coaches like they can't do the coaches because one, that's there's actually real people inside. So if you were to do something with the coaches, you can't really say, well, luckily no one got hurt.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand why they didn't do it with the coaches, but you're gonna have lots of fun, episode ideas with the trucks if you think about it.
Pretty much, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it will. I mean, it does get formulaic at times and everything. So again, it just depends on the writers and everything and how well they're used and everything.
Yeah,
But
so
pretty
so yeah, go ahead, Tari.
but pretty much, yeah, yeah, like you said and everything. Again, the illustration also is really good, and again, I love what Payne did with showing off the dangers and the runaway. When Thomas is going down the hill, again, you can really feel that speed, especially when he's coming over to the station and sliding into a siding and everything.
I also do feel bad for Thomas at the very end. I know he was trying, and I feel bad for him for getting in trouble. If you think about it,
Yeah, pretty much.
I actually feel bad for him a little bit. I know he was trying and everything. But
Yeah. Actually, yeah. When you kind of think about it, because I mean, again, it's also the same thing with Thomas's Train too. It's I think what this story actually does real good. Like again, this is what the adventure begins. Also does Wilbert actually does grow Thomas as a character during this story, and you actually do feel the growth. As the story plays along and everything.
exactly, exactly.
Pretty much. But yeah, so as for me and everything, also one more thing too. This is also the first time where we see the fact director well, not really the first time if you want to count Edward Gordon and Henry. But this again, this is another time where we see him also having a soft side for the engine, where it's well, yes, he kind of does scold at Thomas, he doesn't really punish him per se. He really just more wants him to shun trucks, and I think he does realize that Thomas wants to basically be more a station pilot. He wants to learn, and with him realizing that, he's like, well, all right, well, if you want to learn how to shunt trucks, then stay in the yard here for a bit and shunt them.
Yeah, yeah, you can tell that Thomas really wants to learn, and even though he gets scolded, he at least learns from his mistake, and I love Thomas in this book. He's growing as a character,
He definitely is, and especially when we see the very last story, you definitely see that growth coming in full effect.
pretty much. So
So yeah, well, actually, before we get to that story, am I waiting for the story? Yes, I'm also giving it a 10 out of 10.
Wow, a perfect streak so far.
Well, actually, you know what? I think it's safe to say that even with this final story, like I think it's really going to seal. Because to be honest, even if you give it like a lower score, like if for some reason we were drunk and stupid and gave it like the last story a really low score, a low score, like the final score will still bring this book to like a solid B at the very least.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't think that's gonna happen because But let's get to the next story. Let's get to the next story before we
Alrighty, here we go.
Thomas and the breakdown train.
So picking up where pretty much when you kind of think about it, this is actually kind of like well actually not the first because again Edward Gordon and Henry, but this is like the second time where we get to see a story where like the last we're picking up where the last story left off and such,
A direct
and
sequel.
pretty much. Pretty much, yeah. It's just as I said, like Thomas is learning how to shunt trucks. He sees a breakdown crane, and his driver tells him like what it's for, lifting up engines and such, trying to lifting up engines, clearing like broken tracks and everything. And then we see a new character, James, and pretty much when his brake blocks gets catches on fire, and after the trucks pushing down the hill and everything, Thomas basically comes to the rescue, and because of his bravery and everything, that he's rewarded his own branch line.
Yeah. What a
So yeah, what can you say about the story that hasn't been said already? Like you want to talk about like Thomas being an action-packed show or something like that. This story is pretty much the definition of like how actiony Thomas, like and even the railway series will get later on, like down the line, no pun intended, and such. Um, but pretty much like this is the story where again you feel like after everything Thomas has been through and such, you see that growth happening. You actually see him, slowly maturing, and it's even stated in like the book itself, where like Thomas is finally not acknowledged that like yeah he's not all that he claims to be. He's not all like Mr. Hot Shit or anything like that. He actually matures up and learns, and because of him wanting to learn and everything, he gets rewarded for his actions, and you do definitely feel proud when he finally gets that branch, when he actually gets the branch line that he deserves. You really do feel Thomas being mature and everything, and seeing him getting rewarded his branch line, like you do feel proud of him when he finally gets something like offer for his hard work and such.
Yeah. There is no perfect way to end this story on a great note.
I know, I agree with you right there.
I think we should
But yeah.
let's talk about
Also, I do have to ask, like, what kind of train does like the fat director catch? Like, every time like he tries to see Thomas. I even wondered that as a kid, like watching the TV series version.
trying to catch a train. I guess maybe it's the express if you think about it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Maybe it's the express. I guess.
Yeah,
I think we should talk about James for a little bit.
sure, sure. Sure. Let's do talk about James.
So James actually, a lot of people. So we notice that James is painted black, and let me explain why he's painted black. James was built as an LMYR Class 28. He was built as an experimental version of the Class 28. However, the experiment did not produce the results they wanted, and so they decided to LMS decided to sell James to the Northwestern Railway. And on his first day, yes, this is his first day on the island, that the trucks, make him go too fast, and his brake blocks catch fire to the point where he can't brake, and he derails. And so yeah, talk about that for an engine's first day. Kind of sad if you think about it.
It is. It's kind of well. It's not only just sad, but it's also like it's also pretty scary. Like especially like for someone that like it's trying like it's on his like his first day in the job and everything. Like this actually does prove a lot of. Someone theorized that like the real reason that like James doesn't like doing trucks and such is because of like the bad incident he experienced on his first day, which when you think about it, makes tons of sense. And when you think long and hard about it.
He hates carrying freight, and there's a reason why. Like he still remembers very well that first day of his.
Pretty much like yeah his incident and such, and lo and behold it does it again. It happens to it happens to him again too, like in a later book which we'll get soon.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, go ahead. My bad.
But yeah, I will say, like, when I first, read the story and everything, like, I was a little interested to see James and, like, being in black and everything too. Because again, like, going for like, being like, a TV series kid for a long time, you used to James, being red and everything, and to see him, being black beforehand, it's actually, a neat concept. And again, I like how what the Railway series has, not the Railway series, the Adventure Begins has done, where basically, like, they keep him as this, like, black paint for a while and such.
And it's not until the end of the special where they finally paint him red.
Pretty much.
I always wanted a sequel to The Adventure Begins. Sadly, that never happened,
We,
unfortunately.
uh, we all did. Well, you never know. Never say never. Like, who knows? Maybe one day, like, someone will actually do it someday.
I think a group of Thomas fans made like a fan made sequel called The Adventure Continue.
Yes, there is a fan made sequel of it. I don't know. Like, I think it goes for like James the Red Engine all the way to like Troublesome Engines, but I don't know. I haven't seen I haven't seen a full version of it yet.
Yeah, it's really good. I highly recommend it.
All right. Yeah. For what I also able to see, like, it is pretty good. I do also recommend it as well.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the story.
Yes. So, like I said and everything, again, with the episode being action packed, again, you really do feel that action. You feel the action when James is, being chased and everything, which, again, I also like what the TV series has done in terms of, like, the models. But of course, like, we all, pretty much most of us has loved what the Adventure Begin has done with that. Like, they made that, chase and that runaway even more epic than it needed to be. Like, the shots, the angles, and everything, you really felt that action. Again, that was probably like, the most action packed from Thomas, especially in the CGI series we have ever seen up until that
And
point.
you forgot something important. May I say it?
I think I know. Oh,
No,
dear.
no, no, not that, not that.
Okay, what?
The music, the music.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, yes, I will admit, like, the music, like, especially, like, with the remakes of the two songs they did, again, I can imagine a lot of people were crying, like, when they heard those songs.
Myself included.
Yeah,
So
and again, like, one more thing I was also gonna say too, like, and again, you feel that action again when you see the breakdown train too. Also, going back to Johnny Morris, I actually love. It's actually kind of funny too, where he's done to the trucks, where it's like, we're trying to be like, "Don't hurt us, Thomas! Don't hurt us, Thomas!" and everything, which actually kind of makes it, a little bit more funny when you kind of think about it, because, like, in the books, just be like, oh dear," and everything. So I do like that. Morris actually did, added that line a little bit,
don't
for
hurt
like,
us,
Thomas's
Thomas.
interaction with the trucks.
Don't hurt us, Thomas. Don't hurt us. Oh, Johnny
Yeah,
Morris.
and also, like, how do you feel about, like, how the breakdown train was handled in the Adventure Begins?
Okay, so I'm gonna have an unpopular opinion here. I am not a big fan of Judy and Jerome, honestly. I think when I first watched the special, I was expecting the breakdown train to obviously be non sentient, but when I saw they added faces to him, I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
I
I
found
mean, I mean, to be honest, like, it was either that or they were gonna have to pretend that Rocky has always been on the island and such.
Yeah, I could kind of see why they went in that direction, and I would have hated if they had Rocky.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I think all of us probably would have, like, but both somewhat, like, hated, but also, like, expected it to have Rocky in the special.
Yeah, but thank God they did not go in that direction. Instead, they added Judy and Jerome, which I am not the biggest fan of them, but if you people like them, that's completely fine. I don't mind.
Yeah. So again, like, so again, yeah, this is another story where, like, again, even the illustration really captures the action so perfectly as well too. So again, this is another one where, again, shocker, shocker, but 10 out of 10.
Oh, same here. I gotta give it a 10 out of 10. I gotta give it a 10 out of 10. This is the best way to end off this book. And this story proves that this book, is fantastic, and there's a reason why this book became so damn popular. You can basically buy this book for anybody, and because it has a proper beginning, middle, and end. No wonder why this book, became the most popular, and why Thomas also became the most popular character in the books and later in the TV show.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I loved, how Thomas matures in this story. He actually did what was right. He could, instead of just ignoring James and continue doing his work, he actually went a mile and got the breakdown train, even though he was told he mustn't touch it, and he rescued James. Talk about an engine who has grown as a character.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
And he deserves that branch line. That branch line was so well deserved, man. If you
He
think about it.
does. Again, like, this book really, again, this book set a real good template on, like, how some of the other stories with, like, focus characters are going to be. Like, we're going to have a beginning where, like, the characters are going to be introduced. We're going to have a little idea what they do. The next two stories are basically going to see them, like, maturing and overcoming their trial as they come along. And then the final story, we get to see them, like, overcoming their obstacles and, like, getting the rewards that they so rightfully deserve. And sometimes you're gonna feel like they deserve them in the end.
Exactly. And I
Sometimes
want
it's gonna work, other times it might not work.
Oh, I know. I also forgot to mention that the illustration of Thomas pulling James back to the yard is one of my favorite Railway series illustrations ever.
Oh, same here. And again, like, the TV series, especially with that sundown, perfect, just perfect.
Absolutely perfect. I have to agree.
And again, even with the way Mike and Junior composed it as well too.
The music, oh man,
Yeah,
Thomas and music go well together if you think about it.
pretty much, pretty much.
Yes, yeah, but I can't think of anything else to say. This story's a 10 out of 10, and ladies and gentlemen, this is the very first perfect book in our list.
Pretty much 40 out of 40 for all of us when you add it up, which means both of our overall scoring grade is going to be an A plus.
Plus,
And honestly, like, when you read this book again, like, yes, it's overplayed, yes, it's overrated and everything, but there's a reason for it. There's a reason, like, people love this story and everything. Again, it's the first book where, like, we have a book centered around one character, and Wilbur uses that to his full advantage. Like, he sets up a perfect introduction about what Thomas is like. He gives some, like, perfect trials that you actually do feel sorry. You actually do want to see him mature, and then when he gets to the final conclusion, you feel satisfied with Thomas. You definitely do feel satisfied that he does earn that he deserves that branch line in the end. It is
there
just a perfect way to introduce a character that, like, honestly, like, again, it's no wonder why, like, this character, like, became a main character when the TV series was, like, when the TV series, like, was finally realized.
yeah, I have to agree with you with your statement. Like, there is a reason why this book sold so damn well, and Thomas became the most popular character in the books, which that is going to lead to a big consequence in Chris's books. But that's another story for another time.
Admittedly, yes, it does lead to a big consequence, and not only Chris's book, but, like, in the TV series later on. Because again, even in the model series, like, they did like to overplay Thomas a lot, which again, like, there is a reason for it, but but we do see where the problem lies and such. But again, just because, like, we see the problem does not mean, like, there was not a good reason, or at least there was not, like, a marketable reason going on at the time when that happened.
And Seiko already knows this, and I've told him this millions of times. But Thomas is my favorite character. He is my favorite character.
It's true. And again, once you read his books, and especially, like, this book in particular, it's no wonder why he became very popular, why he's beloved by so many children and even, fans of the show throughout the years and everything.
I also I may sometimes gush about Toby because I also love Toby, but honestly, Thomas is my favorite character in the entire no matter if it's the Railway series, TV series, or CGI era. Yeah. So 40 out of 40. All the stories got a 10 out of 10, and this book is an A plus.
Which,
Man,
you know what, it rightfully deserves that
it
A plus.
deserves it. Yep, I have to agree. This book is fantastic, and if you want to get started into the Railway series, definitely, absolutely, definitely get this book and start with it. It's got
Definitely.
it's got a proper beginning, middle, and end, and once you read the stories, you will have a feeling of satisfaction.
Agreed. So much agreed.
And so with that, we're done with Thomas the Tank Engine. One of the absolutely one of the most perfect railway series books ever written.
Pretty much, and definitely one of the most popular ones too. Like again, I can't imagine how well this book must have sold compared to the first book.
Yeah, and this book, definitely shows the quality of Wilbert's writing. He is a really good writer.
He is definitely a really good writer, and there's no reason why, they wanted more Railway series books.
Yeah. And so with that, that's the end of Thomas the Tank Engine. Man, I had a lot of fun with this one, man.
Same here. Actually, looking back, I think this is gonna be one of the books where, we didn't really have that much negative to say about it. And even the minor nitpicks we might have had and such, they didn't really affect our appreciation for the book overall.
Yeah. A funny story, guys. I actually listened to Johnny Morris this morning, and because I actually forgot to listen to him during the week before we started filming this episode. But
Hmm.
man, it was worth it. It was worth the wait. It was worth the wait.
I could tell.
Yeah. So with that, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Really Useful Podcast. It was a lot of fun diving through this fantastic book. Don't Wouldn't you agree, Zach?
I definitely do agree. And you know what? As much as the next book might might bring some different opinions. I'm still looking forward to the next book as well too.
Oh, me too. Absolutely, me too. Especially with Johnny Morris, because starting from the next book, that's where I think he really steps up his book as a narrator.
Same here.
Yeah. So with that, guys, thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of the Really Useful Podcast. If you guys enjoyed, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you guys want to see more episodes, hit that subscribe button as well. Also, don't forget to check out our channels, OTPod7 and Sequoia the Diesel, and also don't forget to check out Sequoia's gaming channel, which I'll also leave in the description below. So with that, guys, this has been OTPod7 along with my co-host,
So Cora the Diesel.
saying thank you for watching, and we'll be seeing you guys in the next episode of the Really Useful Podcast. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you guys real soon.
Bye bye, everybody.